monster, isn't it?
Hey, in a few years, probably it will be popping out of it with the technology during the interviews. Like, would have like bits of the film.
Did you get to see the movie?
I saw it yesterday.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I did.
Okay.
Then you're ahead of me.
Oh, you haven't seen it yet?
Well, you know, it's funny. I've never watched an episode of 24, so I'm not a huge fan of watching kind of stuff
Well,
that
hey,
I'm in.
24, you can't watch one. You have to watch them all. So you
Right.
can't just.
Well, then
Obviously,
I got lucky.
Yeah.
But this, obviously, I saw rough stuff of it because I had to do ADR and all that stuff. But this is the one film that I really want to see because Paul Anderson's kind of understanding and usage of technology, I think is so extraordinary. So it's something that I will see. And I ran into him on accident on the street like 3 days ago because we're shooting 24 here in London. And he said, yes, it's done. We finished it like 3 days ago. So you got to see the very first finished version.
Exactly. It's quite spectacular how he uses technology as a character in the film. How visible was that for you when you shot? Obviously, a little bit.
Again, and he really is a master of this. I was no more aware of what he was doing with technology than I was if we were shooting 24, or if I was shooting a commercial. He has made it so seamless for actors to be able to interact and do what they're doing. He had built sets that were 16 feet tall, so we would have a set to work on. Everything else was green screen behind it. And I think he's a genius that way. And he's one of those guys that literally, we shot the film over five and a half, 6 months. If technology changed in the middle of that 5 months, he was on it and he knew it. And when someone has that kind of tactile control over and understanding of that, they just deal with it. It's not something that's then put on everybody else. It's the only live action 3D film I've ever made, and I wasn't aware of it.
Well, because the interesting challenge, and I think he's done it really well, is to have those microcosm stories within the big spectacle. So how important was it that there's those human dynamics that still happen even in a big disaster catastrophe?
I think that's the key to making a great film. I think one of the problems with so many of the bigger movies is that they focus so much on making the movie bigger that they forget about the story. And when I first heard of the story, I wasn't, a love story set against, natural disaster. I was like, oh, please. But then I read it, and the writing was so beautiful, and everything starts there. As a metaphor, if you're going to use, that's the basement of your house, and if you don't have a strong foundation, you can't build a great house. But the writing was stunning, and the character that I got to play was beautifully written, as evil as the character was.
Yeah, exactly. Potent and evil, but at the same time with his own flaws.
This was one of the guys that actually loved being evil, so he had so much fun doing it, and there was kind of a joy in it, and that's how I read it, and it was an absolute blast to play. But the technology always has to be in the background. If the story isn't working, the technology and the scope of what you can do visually doesn't matter. And I think Paul really understands that beautifully. And so there is this beautiful love story set against this tragedy. It was very Romeo and Juliet. It's very classical. And so for all of those reasons, it was a fantastic thing to be a part of.
Do you enjoy the costumes, the sets? Obviously, it's all quite spectacular.
I enjoyed the costumes more than I should admit. I was like a girl, Oh, look at this cape. And then, after about 3 months of wearing it, the cape was like 40 pounds. I mean, that's before the armor and all of the other stuff. But no, it was fantastic. I think one of the great things about being an actor is you get to go through different time periods and get to really do what we do as children naturally, which is we pretend to sword fight and we pretend to do all of these things. And now we get to do it with all the real stuff. And, it's fantastic.
How much did you really know about Pompeii? Obviously, we all know a little bit in the back of our minds, but
I
not
knew
details.
I knew very little. And Paul was very kind. I still have not been, so I'm embarrassed to say that. but he gave me great books, and it was really tragic, and it was a really progressive city within the context of the Roman Empire. I mean, it was like the United States San Francisco or Europe's Paris. It was a mover and a shaker, and then it was just so heartbreaking what happened, and the more you kind of understood the lives and the intimacy, because people literally were frozen in time. Mothers holding their children, where they couldn't even move from this point to that point, where it happened that fast. There's a reason why we have remembered what happened there from 79 AD till now. So the more I learned about it, it was heartbreaking, and it kind of really reinforces that love story through the film.
Totally agree. Thank you. That concludes the generic interview.
Okay.
We'll change and